Hey there, welcome. Today I want to talk about infinity and what that means and how that is the proof of God. So I've mentioned in other videos, I have other videos about this, but I sometimes see I'll say this and then other people will be like, well no, it was just the Big Bang. Or, oh no, it could have just been like some limited cause that started the universe. But these are all irrational, these don't make sense. And if we go all the way to the point like, oh, well, the universe doesn't need to make sense, well, then we can't say in either direction that it's God or not God, because we just chose already that it doesn't make sense. But let's say we're trying to make sense of it, so we accept that it can make sense. There will always be a requirement to, or else we'll just be, accepting a lack of knowing, so then we can't assert anything. There will always be a requirement for what came first. What's the origin? What's the origin of that? What caused that? What caused that? What caused that? In the Big Bang Theory, it's kind of, pardon my full knowledge of every nuance of the Big Bang Theory, it's like, oh, well, it's a condensed particle, and it expands and contracts, expands and contracts. And it's self-creating, self-sustaining. This particle is beginningless, apparently, and endless, apparently. And outside of what we call the edge of the particle is infinite nothingness. So, one, in the Big Bang Theory, we're already at, okay, well, we accepted infinity. We already accepted, we accepted eternity, we accepted infinite nothingness. In some regards, we accepted infinity. So, how can we, through our anthropocentric perspective, honestly limit it? Honestly say like, oh, here's the rules of it, beginninglessly and endlessly, and here's the rules of that infinite nothingness. We have no evidence of that. We have no grounds to say for certain what that limit is. There's zero reason to believe any of those limits, earnestly. We have no evidence whatsoever. So how can we assert some limited capacity? How can we say, oh, it's only physical, oh, it's only material, oh, it's only atoms? When you have an entity that expands to the size of the universe and contracts to the size of, I don't know what, a grain of sand, a marble, how could we possibly assert limits upon it? It lives for eternity. How could we say that it isn't conscious? It isn't intelligent? How could we possibly assert that it only follows these laws? Who made those laws? What made those laws? How do those laws sustain for eternity? That's infinite energy. To sustain something, laws, a program, for eternity, that's another layer of infinity, because it has to be infinite, otherwise eternity wouldn't be allowed. What about that infinite nothingness? Can anything spawn from it? Can things just appear spontaneously from it? Then is it nothingness? How does that nothingness sustain itself? If it doesn't need any sustaining, what is it? We can't really say anything about it. It's like this ephemeral, abstract thing. So the thing is that you don't need to believe in anything anybody else believes, myself included. But just believing the Big Bang and then, oh, it's only physical, it's a contradiction. It doesn't work. We have no grounds to say that, especially when you accept that it's beginningless and endless, or at least there's infinite nothingness. There's no ground to stand on there for limitation. We must embrace some sense of infinity. And that's what we're always going to come back to. And let's say the universe is finite, and it contracts and ends, and it just, bloop, it ends. Well, this means consciousness ends. This means any capacity to acquire data ends. So it's an unprovable reality. There's absolutely nothing that can prove that the universe is finite. Because if it was finite, there would be no entity to know it. If there's no entity to know it, it is unprovable. If that was to happen, how did it happen? What created a finite universe? If infinite nothingness is able to create a universe that starts and stops, there is zero grounds to say it wouldn't do it again. There's zero grounds to say it isn't already doing it. There's nowhere to attach to logically limited universe. This doesn't work. There's no ground to stand on, like I say. We are always going to round out to be, oh, well, what caused that? Well, what caused that? Well, how does that work? At worst, we can say, I don't know. That's fine. That's an honest perspective. I don't know. But you can't just say it's just this or it's just that. You have no proof. We have no evidence. Our scientific inquiry does not suggest this. We really don't know. But if you think logically and you embrace the rationality that our consciousness has, it makes more sense that it is infinite, that there's just beginningless, that it's endless. Because there will always be something that began the something, and there will always be something that began that something. And if at one point you're like, I'm bored, nope, nothing began it. Well, that nothing is so powerful, it's also a something. And so you're back at square one. Oh, well, the universe just ends, that's how it goes. Well, we're at nothing again, which created everything. So nothing's basically awesome. There's no escaping it. There's no escaping the endlessness. And like I said, the only escaping the endlessness would be not knowing, would be finitude, where we're done, we're dead. There's no being at all to know. That's God. That's what the yogis are talking about. That's what, Jesus and Muhammad and realized saints were talking about, is that this being is infinite. This interconnected, holistic universe is infinite, and it is what we call God. God isn't Christian God. God isn't what the pastor's saying. God isn't what's in the Bible. God is a notion used to point at reality itself that was developed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years before Christianity, before Judaism, before Islam, even hundreds of years before Krishna or Vishnu. The yogis and saints and sages and beings that practiced certain methods of consciousness saw. Even beings that lived in a more shamanic, psychedelic realm realized, well, this is an infinite spirit that encompasses all of nature and all humankind and all animals and all spirits. If we're honest, we at least sit in the I don't know. But then if we're honest a bit farther without being resistant, we realize that it has to be infinite. There has to be a cause to a cause to a cause. And then if we accept there doesn't have to be a cause, then we kind of just get into another realm of infinity, that there's some ephemeral, super abstract entity or thing that is able to exist timelessly beyond cause and effect. And if that's what we are pointing at reality, saying, oh, it doesn't need a cause, then we're just kind of back to an infinite quality of, well, it's boundless now. It's beyond time and eternity and cause and effect. That's just another realm of there's no reason to put a limit on it. And so honesty just leads us to be like, all right, it's infinite. So what does that mean? Well, if it's infinite, can it have limited intelligence? Can it have limited awareness? Would it be infinite then? If we try to like piece it as like, oh, it's infinite in these ways, but finite in these ways, you're gonna get to a point where, while the infinite parts will always have the possibility to basically consume the finite parts and change them to make their limits disappear. In an infinite universe, there can be no separation. Because if there was a wall between like spots or places or objects, and there's like weird nothingness in that wall, then we created another limit. We created a finitude. This would be not infinite. So there's no wall, there's no separation, and there's no limit to its consciousness. So that's when we just rest in reality and realize God. Thank you so much for watching. Om Sarah.